So tonight is part 2 of a 2-part series. 2 weeks ago, I asked the question, why are you here? And I'm sure that when I asked that question at the start of the service, many of you had one or more answers as to why you were here in this church on that night. It might have been the music, the message, the atmosphere, or maybe just a cup of free coffee. It was my hope that when I asked that question again at the end of my message, that you were thinking of the question from a different perspective, maybe a deeper perspective, kind of what's my purpose here on this planet perspective, more of a global or universal perspective rather than a local in this church on this pew perspective. Last week, Pete talked about what this church means to him and how he came to be here and why it's important in his life, and I echo all of those sentiments. One of the main reasons that I come here is because this is where you find people who are in the battle, in the struggle, who knows what the struggle means and who are honest about what they're going through and how difficult life can be. There's no pretense here. When you ask someone how they are, you better be ready to listen, because they may not tell you just how wonderful life is. They're going to be honest, and sometimes they're hurting. That's why I like coming here, because it's real. Here is safe, and you can be vulnerable. And tonight, I'm going to ask you to be with me and to be vulnerable as we look at another meaning of the question, why are you here? Pete and I have been talking about some things that are a little deeper than just stage 1 recovery. And by that, I mean going beyond just abstinence and looking at some of the underlying issues and drivers of addiction. And we've been expanding on some of those messages to include some of that material. And tonight is one of those nights. Of course, we're in March, so we're still working on step 3. Made a decision to turn our will and lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. And I want to start off tonight with my scripture. So Doug, can I have the scripture for tonight up there? It's from Matthew 11, verses 28 to 30 in the New Living Translation. Then Jesus said, "Come to me, all of you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you. Let me teach you, because I am humble and gentle of heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy to bear, and the burden I give you is light." The Recovery Bible offers this insight. When our burdens become heavy, we find that our way of life is leading us towards death. We may finally be willing to let someone else do the driving. That certainly sounds like step 3 to me. Taking on a yoke suggests being tied to one another, to work together and to make the task at hand easier. That is what we do in our programs. We work with each other toward a common goal. We all have burdens, and by accepting the invitation to share them with Jesus, life gets better and the burdens become more manageable. Then the Recovery Bible offers this. We may have worked hard at getting our lives on the right track, but we still feel we always end up on dead-end streets. And I was struck by that, because I see it many times. People who work hard at getting their lives on track and then think they have it all figured out and stop doing what got them clean and sober and in a better place. Here are some examples of dead-end streets. Starting to hang out again with our old drinking and using buddies. Starting to hang out where drugs and alcohol are being used. Getting into a relationship to medicate or to avoid further healing, thinking I've got this under control, or many other forms of stinking thinking. The book of Proverbs tells us, "There is a path for each person which seems right, but it ends in death." Make sure the path you are choosing isn't a dead-end street. When we began our addictive behavior, it may have been about, or at least we thought it was about, seeking pleasure. The reality for most of us, even though we may still not know it, is that it was about avoiding pain. It seemed like the right path for a while, but before long, we had gone too far. That's the problem with addiction. It does what we want it to do for a while. It will take away the pain, the not feeling good enough, the memories of the dysfunctional families of our childhoods, just as a few examples. It works until it doesn't. So tonight I ask the question again, why are you here? But tonight I ask from a different perspective. Why are you in recovery? What got you here? What set of circumstances led you down enough dead-end roads trying to escape from something? Some of you might be thinking, well, I'm here because I'm a drug addict, or an alcoholic, or a sex addict, or a porn addict, or a gambling addict. But what got you there? What happened to you? Let's take a look, and then I will explain why. For some of you, we may be looking at old news, stuff you have already looked at. For some of you, you may have suspected as much, but didn't know what to do about it. And for some of you, this will be aha moment information. What I'm going to do is to get you to do the ACE questionnaire. It's easy, so you can keep score in your head or count on your fingers. There are only 10 questions to which you answer yes or no. The ACE study, for those of you who don't know, is the largest public health study ever conducted. 17,000 people, and I could go on at length about the importance of this study and how the results shed light on so many health issues: anxiety, depression, autoimmune diseases, heart disease, cancer, addiction, just to name a few. So for every one of these questions, if it applies to you, score a 1. You can count them on your fingers. And this is for the period of time while you were growing up during the first 18 years of your life. Question number 1. Did a parent or other adult in the household often swear at you, insult you, put you down, or humiliate you, or act in a way that made you afraid that you might be physically hurt? If the answer is yes, score a 1. Number 2, did a parent or other adult in the household often push, grab, slap, or throw something at you, or ever hit you so hard that you had marks or that you were injured? Score 1 if it's a yes. Question number 3. Did an adult or person at least 5 years older than you ever touch or fondle you, or have you touched them in an inappropriate way? Question number 4. Did you often feel that no one in your family loved you or thought you were important or special, or your family didn't look out for each other, feel close to each other, or support each other? Did you often feel that you didn't have enough to eat, had to wear dirty clothes, and had no one to protect you, or your parents were too drunk or high to take care of you or to take you to the doctor if you needed it? That was question 5. Question 6. Were your parents ever separated or divorced? Question 7. Was your mother or stepmother often pushed, grabbed, slapped, or had something thrown at her, or sometimes or was often kicked, bitten, hit with a fist or hit with something hard, or ever repeatedly hit over at least a few minutes, or threatened with a gun or a knife? Question 8. Did you live with anyone who was a problem drinker or an alcoholic or who used street drugs? Question 9. Was a household member depressed or mentally ill, or did a household member attempt suicide? And question 10. Did a household member go to prison? Yes or no? Now add up the number of fingers you have up. One of the first things I noticed when I started paying attention to the ACE study and these 10 questions is that there isn't anything in these 10 questions that a thinking person wouldn't readily accept as being trauma. They weren't grasping at straws by including things like, did you have to wear hand-me-downs, or did you have to endure the atrocity of basic cable TV? This study is so renowned that it has been quoted in excess of 1,500 times in other studies. So why am I talking about this? Well, one of the reasons is this. It breaks my heart to listen to people, to listen to the language of people, even people who admit they were alcoholics and addicts, and use language that indicates to me that they do not believe that addiction is a disease, that it is some moral failing or something they should be able to handle on their own. Listen to some more of the statistics from the ACE study. 2.5% of people with only one adverse childhood experience, not one or more, but only one adverse childhood experience, were alcoholics. 5.5% of the people with two adverse childhood experiences, not two or more, were alcoholics, more than double. 11% of the people with three adverse childhood experiences were alcoholics. Now we are just getting to the national average. And 16% of the people with four adverse childhood experiences are alcoholics, a whopping jump of 50% over the national average. Now in my practice, many people who come to see me tell me that they have ADD or ADHD. So listen to this stat, which spun out of the Adverse Childhood Experience study. Children who have been exposed to four or more adverse childhood experiences are 32 times more likely to have behavioral or learning problems. Why is that? Well, when a person experiences trauma, so let's say like meeting a bear in the woods, the brain goes into fight or flight mode and instantly floods your body with adrenaline and cortisol, which shuts off the thinking part of your brain, which would help you to consider other options. You need to fight or to run, and the brain makes sure that you are able to do that. The problem is when the bear comes home from the bar every night and the child's brain is constantly in fight or flight mode. When that happens, there is no room left for math or science. There are irrefutable scientific links found in the ACE study between adverse childhood experiences and the onset of physical and mental health disorders. Mental health disorders such as addiction. It can now be proven by science on a biochemical level how chronic fighting by parents, divorce, death, physical, emotional, and sexual abuse, growing up with an alcoholic or hypercritical parent can leave permanent fingerprints leading to addiction and other diseases. The fact of the matter is that our biography, our family history, determines our biology. The unprocessed trauma can tick away inside of us like a ticking time bomb until it shows up in some form to let us know that the body does not forget the past. Lots of times we deal with people who struggle with relapse. Whenever someone comes to me that is or has struggled with relapse, I know that we need to go looking for trauma. If it is not found and dealt with, some type of relapse will occur. They may not go back to their original substance. They may switch from alcohol to drugs, or from drugs to alcohol, or to sex, or gambling, or food, or television. Anything to avoid the hard trauma work, and anything to medicate away the unprocessed pain. As I said before, from the book of Proverbs, there is a path before each person which seems right, but it ends in death. People who do not process their biography, their trauma, will likely find another dead-end road to go down, thinking it is the right path, over and over and over again. This trauma work is like when you have a deep cut and the knife or whatever has cut you has nicked a vein or an artery. You can't just stitch up the skin. You have to stop the bleeding. I have believed in and teach from a trauma-based model of addiction and treatment, and now all the research is supporting that. I'm not one to use words like always and never. I will say this. Many times people come to me telling me of their wonderful upbringings and their fairy tale childhoods, that there was no trauma, and then they go on to tell me about their addictions, how much they struggled to stay sober, and how many times they have relapsed. Remember what I said, where there's relapse, there's trauma. Now maybe there are exceptions, maybe there are unicorns, but I haven't met them yet. So, why are you here? What got you to this place? What circumstances led you down a path of addiction? Have you done more than work the steps? Have you started or are you working on stage 2 recovery? Abstinence is the easy part. This type of excavation, trauma work, is challenging to say the least. But if you are up to the task, the rewards are too numerous to mention. Are you willing to find out why you are here? So what does all of this, any of this, have to do with step 3? Well, either a little or a lot. I shared one of my favorite pieces of scripture earlier. Come to me, all of you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you. Let me teach you, because I am humble and gentle at heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy to bear, and the burden I give you is light. You will need support if you decide to do this work. Work that will keep you from going down more dead-end roads. You will need a guide, someone to help you with your trauma work, and you will become weary and need to rest. Just let Jesus share your burden. In doing this, you are working step 3 by turning your will and life over.